In this video, I'm going to take 35 characters from The Rookie, and I'm going to talk about them in order from the most good to the most evil, as well as tackle some morally gray characters in the middle. There are a few characters that are basically perfect, so those need to be knocked out first. I would say the most good character on the entire show is Luna Gray. She's wonderful to literally everybody that she meets. She's thoughtful, she's kind, and she goes out of her way to do the right thing. Even in the case of Season 8, Episode 1, Checkmate, from a moral standpoint, she was doing the right thing for Christian Lobo's health and rights. I don't think there is a more pure character in the show than Luna, but there's a couple that get pretty close. Next up, we have Captain Zoe Anderson. Captain Anderson, like Luna Gray, made sure that she did right by everybody. Even Nolan, when he was ostracized by the rest of his superiors, she was 100% serious with him and valued him unlike anyone else. Not Bishop, not Gray, nobody ahead of him on the chain of command. And she looked out for her team every chance she got, no matter how big or how small. She valued her rookies as much as she did her sergeants and didn't give anyone special treatment. It's a shame that we lost her so early, because having characters like her would brighten up the show so much more. Now we're moving on to Aaron Thorson, and once again, I don't think he's done anybody wrong. He uses his fame and fortune for good, like in Season 5, Episode 1, Double Down, when he ordered a private jet when they couldn't get their hands on the LAPD plane to go after Roy, or like in Season 5, Episode 21, Going Under, when the LAPD needed info in order to identify a suspect for a robbery case. While Perry initially didn't want to help, he agreed and gave him the valuable information after Aaron made a clip talk video with him. Moving on to Kojo. He's just a good boy. Sure, he tore up Lucy's apartment that one time before giving him the Tim, but come on, he's just a dog and didn't know any better. He should obviously be forgiven for this because he's a good boy. Coming up next, we have Miles Penn. I think he's an overall stand-up guy who really values doing things the right way. Even if he made some mistakes earlier on in Season 7, he's made sure to correct any mistakes that he makes, and he's willing to learn. He is a great influence on Tim as well, and I can tell that Tim is respecting him more and more as his training continues. So yes, while he's made some pretty careless mistakes, they didn't really affect anyone directly, and he's never pushed back after being told to knock something off. Angela Lopez is up next, and I think she's the best person of the OG main cast. She goes out of her way any chance she gets to protect the people that she loves, especially her husband. She doesn't take anyone's crap, but she doesn't burn bridges either. She can make friends with almost anybody, and she does. If there's one person on the OG cast you want on your side and as a friend, it's gotta be Angela. Next, I have Wesley Evers, Lopez's husband. Initially, he was annoying and a know-it-all, but he really started to redeem himself with how selfless he could be for the people he cares about. Similarly, if not more than Lopez. And he's changed his entire career to help the little guy and prevent injustice on an individual level. He stands for what's right and takes action. Now we move on to Skip Tracer Randy. And I get it. Some people find him very annoying, and he's a controversial character in the fanbase, but you can't say that he isn't a good person. He fumbles a lot, like at the murder scene on the phone with Nolan and Harper, but in the end, he tries his best to do what's best, and he does care about his friends very much, even if they don't feel the same way with him. On to Lieutenant Wade Gray now. I think he's a good leader, and he cares for his officers and other subordinates. However, I think his animosity towards Nolan in the beginning of the show does show that he has a weakness with his leadership. He is very quick to judge someone, and this can be to his and his officers' detriments. But overall, he's great towards his wife and those that he's close to, like Tim and now Nolan. Raj Bronson. While I personally don't like his character, he's a pretty good guy overall. He's got some obvious flaws though, like the music that he writes about other people. This music gets on people's nerves and makes them not like him, but he's not doing that on purpose. That's why he's still pretty decently in the good category. Selena Juarez is up next, and this is another character that had to have a redemption. Her biggest drawbacks were near her initial appearance, as her mistakes did affect people, and she did push back with Nolan since she did end up being right about the case. However, nowadays, she is selfless and helps others in any way she can or is allowed to. And I think now that she's a P2, everyone else has been more willing to take her help. So I think she's gonna rise on this list throughout season 8. Now let's talk about Smitty. He's not a bad person by any means, though his laziness is not a very good trait to have when being a police officer. However, I think springing the $900 HOA on Miles was also not a good thing to do, since he knows Miles' financial situation at this time. Coming up is Chastity Sneed, and while she's not a bad person either, she's done some questionable things in a legal sense. Most of this is as an accomplice of another character on this list, so I'm going to save that for later, and she gets to be above that person. Next up is Lucy Chen, and I think that she's a pretty good character, though I am going to falter on her role in the Chenford Will They Won't They in the last season. She wasn't ready for Tim and her to get back together yet, and rightfully so. However, she intentionally strung him along, like in April Fool's with the fake intimacy as the biggest example. Though there's some other smaller ones. She also low-key emotionally cheated on Chris by agreeing to a date with Tim while still with Chris. Yikes. Wrapping up the good characters section, we have Nyla Harper. She is on the border of good because while she's like Lopez in the sense that she now would do anything for her family and friends, her previous neglect of her family while she worked undercover cannot be ignored. You have to understand how massive of a blunder this was, and for how long. And I'm not surprised it took years to work those relationships back. Without this, she could have been higher on this list. I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from here. Now, on to the morally gray section. Starting out, we have Grace Sawyer. The work she does as a doctor is commendable, saving lives and all that. However, she was low-key leading Nolan on when she was still technically with her husband, and then she randomly drops him to go back to her husband. It's not cheating per se, but it's probably the closest thing to it. Emotional cheating maybe, like Lucy? I don't know. Next up, we have John Nolan. He prides himself on being the best cop he can be, and in 99% of the cases, he is. But when rubber hits the road, that 1% trips him up. He is complicit in the cover-up of another character's conspiracy of murder, which we will be covering later. This cannot be ignored, even if it was a hard choice for him to make. I hope this comes back up later in the show. Chris Sanford. Oh, Chris Sanford. Basically, Wesley if Wesley was a careless boyfriend. Even if it was unwillingly, he brought back his own girlfriend's trauma in a pretty crazy way.
You okay?
He knew Lucy was there. He knew it was harmful to her, but still was careless and hummed it in her presence. Maybe I'm being too harsh on him here? Let me know in the comments. Coming up next, we're talking about Tamara Collins. Tamara is great with Lucy, and she is a great addition to the show, but she did steal Lucy's car and was kind of a brat to her in the beginning, despite Lucy trying to help. I get she was in a bad place, but stealing a car is not the answer to that problem. At least it led to something better though, and I hope they bring her back more often. Remember when I mentioned Chastity earlier? Here's her main man, Pete Nolan. He stole John's inherited car twice. Then add in all the smaller mischievous things that he does involving John, and you've got a tornado of disaster. I don't think he intentionally wants to hurt John or anyone else, but if I knocked Tamara down for stealing a car once, he needs to be further down for doing it twice. Jackson West is the next one on our list, and while he wanted to be a good cop, I don't think he entirely was. His work involving getting rid of Doug, who we'll get back to later, was good, but his season 1 screw-ups need to be highlighted. When any sort of competition or goal is in place, Jackson throws a lot of morality out the window to do so, especially with the episode The Checklist.
Bingo.
It took a long time to get to Tim Bradford, but we're finally here. His treatment of his rookies sometimes can be seen as overboard, as there are times where the tough act is ineffective, and he's doing it purely to keep up said act. And we can't forget about season 6, when he made that vow to kill Ray and almost went through with it before ultimately not doing so at the last minute. And then he lied about his stunt to IA to save his own ass. I talked about how Nolan had covered up for someone else's conspiracy to murder, and that was Bailey Noon, his wife. She's like Grace, where she saves lives, and that is commendable. However, she's also attempted to help end one too. She sent Malvado where Jason was in order for him to kill Jason. Even though she ultimately wasn't correct about it, the intention was there, and then to rope Nolan in and basically back him into a corner where he had to agree was a pretty evil act. Her good actions are the only reason she's in the moral gray category. Jessica Russo. Of course, this comes down to the nature of her kill in the season 1 finale and whether or not it was justified. Did he really pop out and was about to shoot them? Or did she shoot when there was no danger? The show makes it incredibly confusing to know what the true answer was, but I lean towards the latter. Now to round up the morally gray section. Seth Ridley is at the bottom of this section because while his actions truly seem compulsory and not on purpose, his lies have led to catastrophic results, like when Tim and Lucy were stuck in the fire because he covered his own ass for his mistake on not calling in the road. He had nothing to gain from his other lies either, other than showing how untrustworthy he really is. However, his sacrifice to save Nolan is the only reason he scraped by in the morally gray section. Let's start on our evil characters now. Doug Stanton is at the top of the evil characters, and that's because he's just plain racist, not even subtly either. He clearly has it out for anyone who isn't white, whether they're black, Hispanic, what have you. And he let Jackson get beat nearly to death. He is not a good person in the slightest. Malvado is up next. He's a hitman, so obviously he kills a lot of people. But the only reason I have him so high up in the evil category is because he is a hitman and not your average serial killer. He wouldn't kill if there wasn't a large amount of money involved, and he sees it purely as work. Even if the action is evil, the intention gave him a couple of brownie points. He also killed Jason, who was a terrible person too, even if we're not putting him on this list. La Fiera is the least evil of our long-term villains. Most of her evil actions that we see on screen come from her reaction to her son's death. And while that doesn't excuse any of those actions, not even 1%, it shines a light on her, allowing the audience to at least understand what was going on in her head when she was doing them, unlike some of the other characters further down. Next up is Nick Armstrong. He was a mole and was happy to work with some terrible people that put his fellow officers in danger, which, again, we talk about later. And then everything he did to Nolan at the tail end of his run was diabolical, planting all the drugs on Nolan to get rid of him, then attempting to kill him at the end. What a waste of a character arc. As much as I hate Monica Stevens, she is not the furthest down on this list. She has put a lot of lives in danger to better her own life, and she aligns herself with some other terrible people. But I have some other stone cold people underneath her that I think are worse, due to her actions being indirect, and their direct actions are pure evil. We have Elijah Stone up next. I think he's Monica, but with a few qualities that are more evil. He's willing to be more direct with his evilness, like how he directly hired someone to go kill Wesley, and he went out of his way to make Wesley and Lopez's lives a living hell. Also, he was going to kill Lopez himself, so let's throw that in there. Oscar Hutchinson, my favorite villain, is one extremely evil person. He is an opportunist that will literally do anything to get ahead, even murder people. Big example, his kidnapping and attempted murder of Nolan in the season 7 finale. The only reason I don't have him lower is because there's 3 people below him that are truly despicable, evil serial killers. Coming up, we have Caleb Wright, the puppet serial killer of one of the other 2 people we're gonna talk about. His MO is to kidnap people, take them out in the middle of nowhere, and to suffocate them in barrels after tattooing their date of death on their body. He's twisted in the head and deserves this spot. Liam Glasser is our second most evil character, and of course he's gonna be down here. He is a serial killer, one with some pretty cruel tendencies. He literally had a guy tied up in a shower with needles injected all over him. That, and while we don't have confirmation through the show, I think it's pretty obvious that he did the wildfires. Let's be real. And now, for our most evil character in the show, Rosalind Dyer. She's the one that enlists people like Caleb Wright. She's a serial killer and one that's killed numerous people and hidden their bodies. Then, when she gets thrown in jail, she gets others to kill for her. And then when she breaks out of jail, Her dying quest is to try and ruin Nolan's life. She is stone cold. And with that, those are the most good to most evil characters of the Rookie. Make sure to hype up this video if you're on mobile to show me some love, and subscribe to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.